The principal of Devon Junior High was called away on a family matter, and it was left up to the newly appointed assistant principal of Chester Springs School to create, overnight, that year's challenge. She wanted to do something different from the mousetraps. "Can you get away with crime? How to commit the perfect murder," announced her hurriedly drawn-up flyer. The kids loved it. The musicians and poets, the history heads and artists were teeming and bubbling about how to begin. They shoveled down their bacon and eggs at breakfast and compared the great unsolved murders of the past, or thought of ordinary objects that could be used for fatal wounds. They began to think of whom they could plot to kill. It was all in good fun until 7:15, when my sister walked in. Artie watched her get in line. She was still unaware, just picking up on the excitement in the air, figuring the mousetrap competition had been announced. He kept his eye on Lindsay and saw the closest flyer was posted at the end of the food line over the utensils tray. He was listening to a story about Jack the Ripper that someone at the table was relaying. He stood to return his tray. When he reached my sister, he cleared his throat. All my hopes were pinned on this wobbly boy. "Catch her," I said, a prayer going down to earth. "Lindsay," Artie said. Lindsay looked to him. "Yes?" Behind the counter, the army cook held out a spoonful of scrambled eggs to plop on her tray. "I'm Artie, from your sister's grade." "I don't need any coffins," Lindsay said, moving her tray down the metalwork to where there was orange juice and apple juice in big plastic pitchers. "What?" "Samuel told me you were building balsa wood coffins for the mice this year. I don't want any." "They changed the competition," he said. That morning Lindsay had decided she would take the bottom off of Clarissa's dress. It would be perfect for the mouse couch. "To what?" "Do you want to go outside?" Archie used his body to shadow her and block her passage to the utensils. "Lindsay," he blurted, "the competition is about murder." She stared at him. Lindsay held onto her tray. She kept her eyes locked on Artie. "I wanted to tell you before you read the flyer," he said. Samuel rushed into the tent. "What's going on?" Lindsay looked helplessly at Samuel. "This year's competition is how to commit the perfect murder," Samuel said. Samuel and I saw the tremor, the inside shake off of her heart. She was getting so good the cracks and fissures were smaller and smaller. Soon, like a sleight of hand trick perfected, no one would see her do it. She could shut out the whole world, including herself. "I'm fine," she said. But Samuel knew she wasn't. He and Artie watched her back as she departed. "I was trying to warn her," Artie said weakly. Artie returned to his table. He drew hypodermics, one after another. His pen pressed harder and harder as he coloured in the embalming fluid inside, as he perfected the trajectory of 3 drops squirting out. Lonely, I thought. On earth as it is in heaven. "You kill people by stabbing and cutting and shooting," Ruth said. "It's sick." "Agreed," Artie said. Sammy had taken my sister away to talk. Artie had seen Ruth as at one of the outside picnic tables with her big black book. "But there are good reasons to kill," Ruth said. "Who do you think did it?" Artie asked. He sat on the bench and braced his feet up under the table on the crossbar. Ruth sat motionless, right leg crossed over left, but her foot jiggled ceaselessly. "How did you hear?" she asked. "My father told us," Artie said. He called my sister and me into the family room and made us sit down. "Shit, what did he say?" "First he said that horrible things happen in the world, and my sister said Vietnam. And he was quiet because they always fight about that whenever it comes up. So he said, 'No, honey, horrible things happen close to home, to people we know.' She thought it was one of her friends." Ruth felt a raindrop. "Then my dad broke down and said a little girl had been killed. I was the one who asked who. I mean, when you said little girl, I pictured little, you know, not us." It was a definite drop, and they began to land on the redwood table. "Do you want to go inside?" Artie asked. "Everyone else will be inside," Ruth said. "I know. Let's get wet." They sat still for a while and watched the drops fall around them, heard the sound against the leaves of the tree above. "I knew she was dead. I sensed it," Ruth said. But then I saw a mention of it in my dad's paper and I was sure. They didn't use her name at first, just girl, 14. I asked my dad for the page, but he wouldn't give it to me. I mean, who else and her sister hadn't been in school a week? I wonder who told Lindsay, Artie said. The rain picked up. Artie slipped under the table. We're going to get soaked, he yelled up, and then as quickly as the rain had started, it ceased. Sun came through the branches of the tree above her, and Ruth looked up past them. I think she listens, she said, too softly to be heard. It became common knowledge at the symposium who my sister was and how I had died. Imagine being stabbed, someone said. No thanks. I think it's cool. Think of it, she's famous. Some way to get famous. I'd rather win the Nobel Prize. Does anyone know what she wanted to be? A day to ask Lindsay. And they listed the dead they knew. Grandmother, grandfather, uncle, aunt. Some had a parent. Rarer was a sister or brother lost young to an illness. A heart irregularity. Leukemia. An unpronounceable disease. No one knew anyone who had been murdered. But now they knew me. Under a rowboat that was too old and worn to float, Lindsay lay down on the earth with Samuel Heckler and he held her. You know I'm okay, she said, her eyes dry. I think Artie was trying to help me, she offered. You can stop now, Lindsay, he said. We'll just lie here and wait until things quiet down. Samuel's back was flush against the ground, and he brought my sister close into his body to protect her from the dampness of the quick summer rain. Their breath began to heat the small space underneath the boat, and he could not stop it. His penis stiffened inside his jeans. Lindsay reached her hand over. I'm sorry, he began. I'm ready, my sister said. At 14, my sister sailed away from me into a place I'd never been. In the walls of my sex there was horror and blood. In the walls of hers there were windows. How to commit the perfect murder was an odd game in heaven. I always chose the icicle. The weapon melts away.